Hello friends, welcome to another session of Emotional Café. Here I am, Xiomara Mayo Ingram, and as every session I am trying to share with you those specific topics that I know can help us continue with our emotional growth. We've been talking about happiness as our main theme for a couple of sessions already, and the topic for today is quite an interesting one because it's about forgiveness. It's about forgiving others, but also about asking for forgiveness when we have been the ones that have caused any harm, any damage to any other person. So I'm not going to go ahead with lots of definitions about forgiveness because for some people forgiveness is being able to let go on the resentments. Other people think that it's being able to make peace with the fact that you did me some bad. But honestly, forgiveness is one of those concepts that each one of us tend to have a particular definition in that regard. And I don't want to lead you in any way. I don't want to go against whatever is your concept about forgiveness, but rather than that, I want to share with you some of the misbeliefs and the misconceptions that we have when it comes to forgiveness. Why is it so hard for us to forgive others and to ask for forgiveness ourselves when we're the ones that need to do it? And at the same time, to give you some recommendations that might help you if this is your case, if you're going through any situation in which you have to forgive another person, or maybe you need to go and ask for forgiveness. Some of the main considerations that I wanted to start with are the fact that forgiveness has been considered by science itself as such a relief when it comes to our emotional and spiritual and physical health. It is extremely important because of how well we feel after we get rid of that huge burden that we have inside when we are refusing to forgive. At the same time, I have to tell you that usually we relate forgiveness with being weak, but it's actually a huge sign of strength when we are capable of putting our toxic emotions aside and whatever is it that we're feeling in order to forgive and move on. Now, let's talk about some misconceptions and some wrong ideas about forgiveness. And I can say that this is probably the main reason why it is so hard for us to deal with forgiveness. One of them is that when you're forgiven, it doesn't necessarily mean reconciliation. It does not mean that you're going to keep going as if nothing happened. It does not mean that you're going to interact with this person that harmed you in any way as if this is your best friend. No. So again, forgiveness does not imply reconciliation. It does not imply that it doesn't hurt you, whatever happened. It does hurt you, and it's your pain, but again, if you forgive, it won't imply that it's less important for you or that it hurt you less. Also, I can say that forgiveness does not mean that everything has been restored and everything is been as if this situation I didn't go through, and that this other person is going to be so close to me that it's going to harm me again. It doesn't mean that you're not going to protect yourself and be responsible to take care of yourself and keep some distance from people and situations that you know might cause you harm. Forgiveness does not imply that you're going to forget about what happened. It is great. Some people that can say, oh, I forgot it. That's great. But for other people, and I can include myself in that group, it's hard to forget some things that have been really painful. So again, forgiving is a choice. It doesn't mean that I'm forgetting what happened, but it means that I'm moving beyond that point, that I'm moving on, and that I'm not letting whatever happened to continue affecting me in such a negative way. I also have to say that forgiveness does not imply that you're justifying what happened or minimizing what happened in any way. It does not imply that the person that harmed you or that did something wrong is not going to have to deal with consequences. Let me tell you this, everybody has to deal with consequences. Everybody pays consequences. When you act appropriately, when you do what you're supposed to do, Your consequences are so good that you don't even feel their consequences. You feel more like it's a reward. But when you don't act the way you're supposed to act, when you act in a wrong way, there's no way you're going to get away without some sort of consequences of some kind. So forgiving does not imply that the person that it's the person that caused the offense to you is not going to have to deal with the consequences. And finally, forgiveness does not mean that you're giving them permission to do you wrong again. You're not giving them the opportunity to harm you again. It doesn't mean that you're opening the doors and come and harm me again. No. Again, you are responsible to take care of yourself and protect yourself. And when someone harms you, it might be hard for you to trust that person. As a matter of fact, it might be your choice not to trust that person again. And it's your choice and it's your right. But you are entirely responsible for that. But you can still forgive and move past that point. As I said, and as you can see with these misbeliefs, these are pretty much the main reasons why it is so hard not only to forgive, but also to ask for forgiveness. Because sometimes we think it's being right what matters, and if I forgive you, that means that I'm not being right. I'm not the right on this situation. Maybe it's my way to control the situation by not forgiving you. Maybe it's my way to avoid that you come close to me again because I don't know how to set boundaries so you don't do it again. Maybe not forgiving you is my way to impose myself to punish you and to make you feel bad about what you did. And sometimes it's just fear because I don't know what's going to happen and I am so afraid of how I felt and I don't want to feel like that again, but I don't know how to stop it from happening again. So my recommendations, I'm going to give them to you in two categories. The first category is going to be if someone has done something bad, something that harmed you in any way, something that really hurt you, and you have to forgive them. These are my recommendations for you if that is your case. Please admit and accept your pain. It's yours. It's real. It's what you felt with whatever happened. Then make peace with the fact that it's better for you to forgive. Because sometimes we want to forgive, but we're not willing to do it. Sometimes we are overwhelmed with our own pain and indignation. And sometimes we are overwhelmed or wrapped up with the misbelief, the misconceptions that we have about forgiveness. So you have to come to a place in which you feel at peace about forgiving, knowing what it implies and knowing what it does not imply. Have the determination to forgive and let go on your resentments. Not because of the other person's going to be better off, but because you will be better off. Because you will feel better about yourself. Establish those specific actions that you need in order to take care of yourself, in order to protect yourself. You are responsible for that. And that does not mean that you didn't forgive. It just means that now you're being more careful in order to avoid any other person from hurting you. Now let's go to the other category. Let's say that maybe you hurt someone. Maybe you did something wrong. Maybe someone is really, really upset with you, maybe mad at you, maybe wants nothing to do with you. So you need to ask for forgiveness. What are my recommendations for you? First of all, recognize that you did something that hurt another person. It might have happened accidentally. Maybe you didn't want to hurt this other person, but you did. And you have to accept that you did. Don't justify, don't minimize it. Just simply recognize it and accept it. Try exercising the idea of the opposite situation. What was your reaction if this situation had happened to you? Put yourself in that person's shoes. It always helps to do it in an inverse way so you can kind of feel what this other person felt. Be humble enough to ask for forgiveness in a direct way, not sending a text, not saying hi as if nothing happened, not pretending that nothing happened. No, go talk to the person and say, I really want you to forgive me. Restore whatever was the harm that you did, whatever damage, whatever offense. Try to restore whatever is possible to restore. But remember that it's not up to you anymore. You do your best to try to fix it, but the other person needs to accept your restoration, and you have no control over that. So assume the consequences of whatever you did. And maybe the consequences will be that this person wants nothing to do with you anymore. It's part of what you have to accept and respect as a consequence of what happened. And finally, think about it and think how you could prevent this from happening again. Try to get some learning out of it in order to grow up and avoid yourself from being in the same situation later on. Remember, my friends, that not forgiving or not asking for forgiveness has a negative impact directly on ourselves. We suffer. We have that burden inside that does not let us be fully happy. Finally, I wanted to remind you that when you forgive, it's not about the other person, it's about yourself. When you ask for forgiveness, it's not only about the other person, it's also about yourself. These are things to do because you are trying to be happy and maintain your happiness. And forgiveness is a huge part of it. Try to stop and think before you act so you avoid yourself from being in situations that later you're going to regret and you're going to have to be asking for forgiveness. Remember that when we cause any harm, we need to be humble enough to accept it, recognize it, to ask for forgiveness and deal with our consequences. My friends, again, thanks for joining me in another session of Emotional Cafe. I hope I get to share with you my other topic in regards to happiness, because as I told you before, we've been talking in a couple of sessions about happiness, how to be happy and how to maintain our happiness. And today we were seeing how forgiveness is a huge important aspect in order to preserve our happiness. I hope to see you in our next Emotional Cafe session. See you then.